course, we have to talk about the Drake album For All the Dogs that just came out over this past weekend. I tried my best to stay up for it, but unfortunately it was slightly delayed, so it didn't drop. I think usually when American albums come out on the Friday night, that's usually around 6 a.m. Saturday my time. So I've got time to listen to it a little bit before I kind of go to quote unquote bed, or sometimes when I wake up, if I go gym early in the morning, I can listen to it straight away. But I didn't, so I had to kind of wait for everybody else to listen to it. Then by the time I woke up in the afternoon of Saturday afternoon, I was able to listen to it at home and listen to it a little bit into the gym. And I have to be honest, I really enjoyed it. I know some of the reception from people online hasn't been the greatest. Obviously, we're going to speak about the Joe Budden stuff, but personally, being a fan of Drake and mostly being a Take Care type of fan, that's kind of when I started, and that's kind of my introduction to Drake. And obviously also being a fan of his sort of musical journey and understanding kind of where he's coming from because of the experience I had being a Weekend fan. I'm still am, but that experience of kind of having somebody do House of Balloons and then go and do something like Kissland, and then obviously going to the albums he's done subsequently, you can realize that some artists, although we would love them to be like Ye and to take chances on each albums and to be experimental and shit, some artists enjoy, you know, trying to challenge themselves and become a pop star, which basically has its own levels of challenge because you have different level of fans and people you have to basically satisfy. And there's also people who just want to do their own thing. So, you know, not everybody can be a Ye, not everybody wants to be a Ye, and that's perfectly okay. So I'm judging the album solely based on Drake's previous work. And I have to personally say, I think his previous, if I'm not mistaken, his actual last proper album was Certified Lover Boy, if I'm not mistaken, right? Not collaborative anything, just an actual album was Certified Lover Boy. And I possibly can honestly say, I didn't really enjoy that. The compilation was great, and honestly, never mind, I enjoyed that because it's got a lot of electronic dance music type inspired stuff that I'm obviously into, like loads of like what you describe as housey, tech housey, deep housey, minimal type of sounds. I'm already a fan of that, the same way I was a fan of what's that one called, the one that's got flipping gigs on it, because that was also kind of the similar type of vibe. The one I'm thinking about is More Life. That also had a lot of kind of, you know, danceable kind of tracks that he probably have heard when he was on holiday and out and about and shit. So I'm not really that bothered about the compilations. I quite like them. I know a lot of fans don't, and they prefer to just have rapidly rap albums or R&B albums. But compared to Certified Lover Boy, which unfortunately for me was a big disappointment, I really did like For All the Dogs. I think All the Dogs has been one of the better, most interesting albums that Drake has put out in a while. Different flows, different sounds. Sonically, it sounds really interesting. The beats go in interesting places. The features are cool. Like, I'm a real big fan of the album. I really did enjoy it. And I think first kind of like critique would be, I would probably change the ordering a little bit, the sequencing of the album slightly. As good as Virginia Beach is as a track, I might start off with Amen with Tezo Touchdown as a feature going first, because that Tezo Touchdown feature is absolutely flames. And it's annoying because I'm a fan of Tezo Touchdown, but that album he dropped recently was really, really underwhelming, considering as well how great his features has been. It's sort of similar to J. Cole. J. Cole's been smashing it with the fucking features the last 18 months or so. If he was to drop an album and it's underwhelming, people are going to be really disappointed because you've kind of, you know, our expectation levels are super high because of the features you've been doing. Same with Tezo Touchdown. He makes all these amazing features. Then Drake goes out of his way to say that he's the most incredible artist he's ever worked with. More pressure. The album ends up dropping and it's a bit of a meh. I haven't listened to it again since it basically released, which is a disappointment because he's a really good artist. And he reminded me of that, and his range, musicality, and all this malarkey, and his talent on Amen. He sounds incredible on it. I really do love him on the album. Sounds fantastic. Sounds really good. And he's got a few writing credits on this album as well. So clearly the guy's pen is no joke. Calling for You featuring 21 Savage is a really good tune. I really enjoyed 21 Savage's verse. Fear of Heights is also one of my favorites on there. Daylight I really liked. Of course, First Person Shooter with J. Cole. Everybody's loving that. I Don't Give a Fuck featuring Yeet is fire. Flames, actually. I really flipping actually enjoyed that. I also enjoyed 7969 Santa, which flowed incredibly well with Slam You Out. And how much different does Slam You Out sound now that we've kind of heard it in sequence? How much different? It sounds absolutely incredible. I love Slam You Out. Really, really amazing tune. And then actually one of my favorites, I'm not going to lie, is Bahama Promises. I think this free run is maybe one of the most emotive runs I've felt in a while. Like this does something to me when I hear 696, 7969 Santa, Slime You Out featuring Scissor, and Bahama Promises. One of my favorite free song runs from Drake in a very, very long time. It's just there's a real warmth and a feeling to it, especially Benny X. I'm thinking about his productions and stuff. Although he has that style that a lot of kids love nowadays, I don't know what you'd call it, that sort of like digitized, synthy, almost tinny sound. He still has an ability to make his tracks feel warm. I don't know how to describe it else, but that's the way I kind of describe it. Benny X has a really talented ability to make tracks feel some level of warmth to it, and I think he does a really good job of Slam You Out. But Bahama, and obviously the other person involved is too, is called Grant Lapointe as well, so big up those people. And I think there's meant to be 4. Who else is involved here? Noel, Castarde, 40, and Drake and D10. Bahama Promises, but it's absolutely flames. Absolutely love that track. Then it gets into Tried Your Best, Screw the World, Drew Picasso. If I was being really picky and I wanted to reorder this album and cut some fluff out, because I think there is a real lack of really aggressive self-editing when it comes to music in general. But I also think Drake is a peculiar one because he's always been somebody that's been willing to give his fans more, right? Because obviously he's one of the biggest artists out there. He likes to give people soundtracks for their lives and shit. He mentioned it all the time on his live shows. So I think looking at his discography, you can't really find many projects that he has that are like less than 10 tracks. Yeah? They don't exist. He's always going to do more than 10, and sometimes he'll give you a fucking double disc just to kind of keep you happy and shit. So he's never going to do a 14 album track, or no, which I think the last 14 album might have been More Life, innit? More Life I think had like, yeah, or even More Life wasn't that short. I can't think of one. Maybe was it the Care Package that was quite short, 17 tracks on the Care Package. I can't think of many that were really, really short. 14 tracks was the last one I can see here, was Dark Lane Demo Tapes, which again was a compilation. So I would like him to do a tight 14 as an album, or even a 10, but we're not going to get that in a while. So if I had to do it myself, I would probably stop the album around track 12. If anything, I'd probably make it 14 tracks, and then I'd include some flame ones which are on the other side, because I think the first, let's say 12 tracks on this album are bad, are super good, and then the other second half, I think it kind of falls off a bit of a cliff, unfortunately. Members Only featuring Party Next Door is a real disappointment. I was really looking forward to hearing Party Next Door again. I'm not too sure if his sound is dated, or if it's just him, or if it's my ear, and I've kind of, other people have come in and occupied his space that he used to take up in my, listening, whatever it may be. He just doesn't sound the same. Party Next Door doesn't hit the same as it used to do in the past. And again, I don't know what's happened. It might not be him, it might just be me, but something has happened and he doesn't really resonate with me the same way. So I didn't really enjoy Members Only. What Would Pluto Do? I could really miss with that one. The All the Parties featuring Chief Keef was a really interesting one, because you couldn't really hear Chief Keef on the track, really, to be honest. I like how they kind of flipped around with his voice and shit. The production on it was absolutely crazy good as well. 8 AM in Charlotte I definitely include in my top 15 tracks or 14 tracks if I had to kind of slim it down. I also like Gently featuring Bad Bunny, but I'm also a big Bad Bunny fan, so I'm probably a little bit biased in that regard. And then I also thought a real big sleeper, an undercover hit, is Rich Baby Daddy featuring Sexy Red and Scissor. This is a really underrated track, but I think this is going to go off in the clubs. It'll go off live. Like, this mixed well correctly is going to be a banger. And then another late night featuring Lil Yachty. I didn't really enjoy Drake's verse on this. I like the production. I think the video is really great, but it's something I can kind of miss. And then Away From Home, I was really a big fan of at the end. One of my favorite tracks. I love when Drake gets on his like, I remember, you guys aren't shit. I always keep a grudge type of energy, because, I'm usually somebody that tries to be the most, I try to be what's that thing called? Purposely forgetful, right? I always try and kind of do a little bit of a self-deletion in my brain of people that maybe fucked me over in the past, so I can just keep moving. But it's also nice to be reminded by stellar artists that no, use those guys as fuel, as motivation to kind of keep you going. And that's the kind of energy I felt for the entire album, because I think Drake warned us many times this was going to be, it's kind of, it's in the name, For All the Dogs, that it was going to be a very honest, maybe brutally honest album that was also going to be veering on the side of misogynistic, maybe on the side of toxic masculinity, but it was going to be the opportunity to kind of talk his shit. And I think he told us also he was talking some shit on here, and I think he ended up did he ended up talking a lot of shit on it. I think there's bars here that people are alleging were going at Ye. There's bars here alleging going at Rihanna and saying the sex was average and stuff, taking the piss of maybe Rocky and the fact that he can't leave her. Like loads of little subs and digs at certain people on this album. And I think personally for me, I enjoyed it because it sounded like it came from a real place. He actually sounded, I wouldn't say hungry, but he sounded annoyed, right? You know what I mean? He had that kind of annoyed, like, what are these guys talking to me about? You know, like, what those LA guys do now? Like, you know, like, that wave their hand, the little goons and stuff. Like, he had that kind of energy about him, which I really enjoyed, to be completely honest. But like I said, if I was really kind of critical, I'd have kind of slimmed the album down to about 15 tracks if I could. He's never going to give me a 10 album, which I would love. 10 bangers, you know, 1 to 10, but if I could get down to 15, I could easily do that. And I think I'd get rid of most of the second half after maybe track 12, and then I'll maybe include, like I said before, 8 AM in Charlotte, Gently featuring Bad Bunny, Rich Baby Daddy featuring Sexy Red and SZA, and of course Away From Home. Really did enjoy that, and I thought that was cool. And I also like, to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, I think the him and Yachty relationship is pretty cool. I'm liking how they're hanging out. I'm liking that he's having a new lease of life with Yachty around. I think there's no coincidence that since Yachty's been around, he's been dressing in a way more quote unquote cooler way. His style's definitely improved. You know, you can obviously see with the inspiration with the nail polish, the clips in the hair and stuff. I think all of that stuff is necessary and needed if he is an artist at his level, because he's achieved everything, right? Where else is the motivation going to come from? You need to have it by the people you're surrounded by, because, you know, you can have everything that money can buy, and some things that you can't buy, like friendship, you kind of get inspired through that, through their stories, through their experiences and stuff, and that can maybe inform your art. So I'm a big fan of it, and I'm eager to see how this relationship develops and grows and goes into it. And I also think there's something to be said for Yachty's ability to be friends with Drake because of how much of a smaller artist he is. I think there is, in general, definitely, you could tell from looking on the outside looking in, guys at that level probably find it hard to make friends because everyone's always wanting something from them. So when you find somebody who's secure in themselves, doesn't need you for anything, and just wants to be your friend, it's quite refreshing. So it's no surprise that Drake has latched on to Yachty and is now calling him his fucking best friend in stadiums and shit, right? Because he probably doesn't meet a lot of people, especially kids or artists at Yachty's stage, who are not trying to get a feature out of him every time they meet. They're not trying to get him to listen to music. They're just talking, hanging out, talking shit, busting each other's balls and stuff, and just doing what friends will do. So it's pretty cool to see, even though some people don't agree with his music and stuff, whatever it may be, it's cool to see that he's clearly got a personality that a lot of the bigger dudes in hip-hop and the music industry kind of like. And of course that will probably solidify him for years and years to come, because they're always going to look after him. So yeah, for all the dimes. Sad that I know all the tea. Broken pinky promises. You fucked up our Bahamas trip. I know that you're not for me.